In the Shadows, Resistance in France, 1943-1944, a game published by GMT, primarily a two-player game, in which one player will control the forces of occupation in France in this time span, and the other player will control the partisans, the rebels. And so two-player game primarily, but also comes with a solo variant that has its own bot, with the actions of the bot described in a dedicated rulebook, and also some specific components, those two decks of cards there. I'm gonna tell you about the two-player game in this video, and then, and the solo version is, well, there's a bot and there are cards, and the bot does what the occupation would. Now, so here we have a map of France. It is divided into 3 districts. Each district is divided into zones. And what you see here is set up at the beginning of the game. And after I film this video, I may just play a two-player solo, a two-handed solo game here. We have a track here indicating the occupation resources collected by the Germans whenever they're able to move this token here from Paris to that spot there. They will move this marker down here. This marker is then reset. The idea is that they would want to ship out as many resources as possible. But that also angers the local population and moves a game piece to the resistance pool. And they will need the occupants to have a minimum number of resources to win the game. So one thing that the occupation is doing, ship resources out. Another thing that the resistance is doing is to reduce the authority of the occupation, and certain actions will allow them to move down this marker. As you can see, that indicates the minimum number of resources that the occupation must have. I know it's tiny, but I think you can see it. That's why if I can move this marker down here, the occupation will need to have at least 3 resources on the track I showed you previously in order to win. And the general idea is this: you're gonna play for 9 turns. The occupation is trying to arrest and remove resistance units from the game, and to again collect occupation resources. If at some point there are no resistance units on the board, the occupation wins immediately. Otherwise, it goes to whether before the end of the game the occupation is able to reduce the resistance enough and collect the minimum amount of resources. And if they do that, they win. The resistance wins in every other situation, every other case, which means the resistance wins by surviving, by keeping units on the map, and by sabotaging enough to reduce the authority enough to prevent them from having the minimum number of resources. So, more in detail, a couple other things. Here we have the resistance operations. In order to move down this marker on this track, the resistance will need to take resistance operations. Each time they do so successfully, and they will move around this rondel, and this space on the rondel here says lower authority, and then that happens. And then you take that action again, then you take that action again, and when the marker is there, you have different advantages. Then you take the marker again, boom, and that's how it's done. When you reach that space, CNR is formed. Usually you will have trouble as a resistance coordinating actions with different parts of the board. Once you form the CNR, that becomes easier. You'll see what the details are in a little bit. Now, you are gonna use an event deck. Actually, no, a couple of other things. These are the Germans, these are the Milice, and here we have the cells and the Maquis. Tricky. The cells and the Maquis. And and they will be face down this way when they are under cover, when the enemy doesn't know exactly where they are. When they are uncovered, you flip them face up. Of course, they will want to spend actions to be face down again as much as possible, because when they're face up, it's easy to capture them. But I pulled this marker here, so that's really bad. At the beginning of the game, you will place some units on the board, but you will also have to shuffle 3 of these informers here, 3 of these informers together with the regular cells. That means that you yourself, as the French player, as a resistance player, don't know when you're bringing in somebody new and recruiting people if some of those are informers. If they are revealed to be informers, then it is the occupation that controls them, and there are different effects that will be triggered by that. For example, understandably enough, it is easier for the occupation to capture Machian cells if there is an informant in the area. I think that's enough for the general idea. Now finally we can look at the event deck. You shuffle these cards together during setup, and then you give each player a hand of 2 cards. At the beginning of each turn, each player selects a card. Suppose this is resistance and this is the occupation. And I know when I was playing my two-handed solo game, because I play the player aids here, so I know which side is which, resistance and occupation. Then the 2 sides reveal. Now we look at the action points, the number indicated there. The player with the highest total decides who goes first. In this case, the resistance decides to go first. And that becomes the active player. Then the active player will resolve, then we look at the event on the card of the active player, and the corresponding player resolves it. So resistance will get this one, then they get to spend their action points. Then when it's time for the occupation to go, we still resolve this event for the resistance, then the occupation resolves their actions using those action points. So we said that the resistance goes first, we mark their action points there, we resolve the event. And then as for spending actions, you see there is a suit there that indicates a specific area on the board. That means that I can spend my action points without any extra cost in there, just their standard cost, but I will need to pay more if I'm using that suit to perform actions somewhere else. And so that's the thing. Also, if I perform a certain action as a resistance, if I perform a certain action in a certain area, say I'm trying to sabotage there, I did that. And then if I do, during the same turn, the same action in the same area, I need to have a covered unit and I need to uncover it, because the occupation starts noticing the patterns of people doing the same things in the same place. Which is why, although sabotage is pretty abstract, there isn't a specific area where you do it, then I tried to sabotage there, that didn't work. So I'm gonna move to this other region and I'm gonna sabotage there. That worked pretty good. And then maybe I'll use somebody else to sabotage, and so on and so forth. The occupation doesn't have any similar limitation. They can just do the same action in the same region over and over again if they so desire, but they still have the restriction of using of performing actions in a specific region to be maximally efficient. Otherwise, you had to spend extra. And so, what are these actions that I'm talking about? The simplest thing to me is to show you the player aid. You can also simply just pause, and that's it, and you get a sense of all that you can do, because this is the heart of the game. Moving units that are uncovered, so at this point you don't need to be super careful. They know where you are. Cost 1. If you're moving stealthily, cost 2 action points. And then all these other actions have the penalty of 1 extra action point if you're performing them in the unmatched suit area. Again, that's what it means. Hide resistance, you flip it face down. And then ambush, sabotage, and recruit. Ambush is when you try to remove German units or move milice. Sabotage is when you try to move that marker there, occasionally lowering their authority. And recruit is when you try to get new units on the board. Now, when I'm talking about trying to do stuff because several actions you're not sure you'll be able to perform, then that's when you have the resolution deck. You will simply flip a card and check the section indicated there. I'm trying to recruit, hooray, I recruit a cell. I was trying to sabotage, this is the card that I draw from the resolution deck, then I do get to move my token there by 1. Hooray! Unless there is an informer in the zone. And as for the ambush, I can remove from the region any 2 enemy pieces. And so, as you can see, the cards will have different situations. Sometimes, yeah, I'm able to move it, but I get an alert marker in the area where I was operating. There will be negative effects for that, including the fact that the Germans can move faster and for 0 action points into an area with an alert marker, but then you remove it. And so that's for that. And for the actions of the occupation, they're very similar, and similarly, in order to check if you're successful, you will draw a resolution card and look at the corresponding area. Again, the German and the milice can move, they can try to uncover the resistance, they can inspect a cell looking for an informant. They can arrest uncovered areas, uncovered units. Costs 1 for a cell and 2 from a key. The reprisal is when set a zone with the German units and alert marker, you uncover all resistant units. And the roundup is when you're transporting resources from there to there, and so you move the confiscated resource marker on the map 1 space toward Germany. Because again, remember, then you advance on that one and you will meet the minimum requirement that the resistance is trying to increase as much as possible. This is it. This is how you play in the Shadows, at least the 2-player game. But the solo game is very similar. You just have to check all the steps to see what actions the bot will perform. In the Shadows, I played it 2-handed solo, meaning I play both sides of the contest at the best of my possibilities. I had all the cards face up. You still have the search as the occupation, the search for the infiltrators, making contact with people that may turn out to be informants, because at least at the beginning no one knows, including the owning player, to understand the rules. Not even the resistant player knows which ones will turn out to be informant. And yes, I'm sure that there is a mind game about which how many action points you want to play to see who may go first. But ultimately, if there's a certain action, a certain amount of action points, I found that I wanted to go for those. And so, just if you're planning to play that way, in my experience, it works pretty well. I also tried the bot, so the true solo, and I did not enjoy that one so much. I found it particularly cumbersome. When I play games solo mode with the prescribed AI, I needed to be very lean and simple for that to work for me. But here, you just had to go through so many steps on the flow chart that I was like, I'll just make my own decisions. And so I ended up playing 2-hand the solo anyways, with just in fewer steps. So the game itself is good. It's really good. It's fun. It's just, you have a lot of historical flavor in a very simple package. And at the beginning, it felt maybe too simple, too simplistic. I wasn't really sure the first couple of actions, maybe even the first couple of rounds, why I was doing things. Sabotage, okay, I mean, I'll just take the action. Uncovering people, okay, I'll just take the action. Until I realized that of course there are better chances of doing certain things with certain combination of people. Yeah, so if you have an informant and if you have the milice, then it's gonna be easier to uncover people. If you have the occupation forces, the Germans, then it's easy to arrest them. And the same thing for certain things. If I have multiple people there, it's gonna be easier to sabotage. So then things all of a sudden started feeling particularly thematic, and the map started feeling a lot more interesting. Again, it's fairly abstract overall, but when alerts tokens start being placed on the board, then it becomes a lot more interesting as you're moving to certain areas. The restriction for I should say the penalty for the resistance of doing the same thing over and over again in the same round forces you to move, and then I need to decide who goes where, and I go to that area but it's surrounded by alerts, and then make it stuck there. You will lose some areas, you will get an advantage in certain other ones. So the board started feeling a lot more relevant than I felt at the beginning. I would say in general, yes, so the depth of the theme emerges only after a while, not just when you read the rule book, but when you see the interactions of the rules with the outcome deck, with the deck resolution deck, which is brilliant to me. It's just so simple, so elegant. You just don't have to worry about where's the table and the chart and the modifiers for this and that. You remember a certain combination of people will lead me to certain outcomes being more likely, and the resolution deck hardwires all of those elements for you. You just flip a card and you see history happen, which is pretty awesome. Again, the game feels thematic. The topic is one that is always fascinating to revisit, seeing how these common people they were taking all these risks to defend their families, their home. It's just very nice. So, in the Shadows, definitely it works as a two-handed solo. I'm pretty sure it will work very well as a two-player game because you have all the elements that they experience, plus a little bit of mind game here and there. It plays pretty quickly, plays in under an hour, and there is so much history, so many interesting decisions to be taken in what is definitely a very lean game engine. Again, I don't know that the true soul is all that exciting. It wasn't for me, but maybe if you like flowcharts and a little bit of crunching of rules and if-then passages, maybe it'll work for you. But in general, I'm definitely happy with In the Shadows.